England fans, well, look away because what we're going to be reviewing today is the Boxing Day Test, which, of course, Australia won emphatically by an innings and 14 runs. And the Ashes urn has been surrendered by the Englishmen in 3-0. Could it be 5-0? Well, we'll ask James Buttler, who joins us right now, who's not been a happy man viewing this England team with so many records going against them. Most ducks in a calendar year, most defeats in a calendar year. It's just been a horror show, if you ask me. But James, coming to you, we haven't spoken to you yet, and I seriously want to ask you one word to describe the shenanigans that we watched on day three.
Or one word, shambles. It was shambolic. It's frustrating. It's made me angry. I think watching a team, watching cricket. I never get that partisan. I'm not bothered if England win or lose. To be honest, I just want to see good cricket. So I've got no issue with Australia winning this series. Fair play to them. They've been the better side and deserved it. That second evening when Pat Cummins and Mitchell Starc ran in, and they were just awesome. I defy any team in world cricket not to have lost wickets in that situation. But it's the timid nature. It's the rolling over without a fight on day three, to be bowled out for 68 and to go out, within 7 sessions in the third Test match, to have been beaten 3 times on the bounce by massive margins, to have not actually scored a first innings total they've been capable of doing anything with. To allow Australia to score 260 something and win by an innings, it's just an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster, Avanish.
It is, and I can sympathize with the English fans because look, they made changes going into this. And if you've not seen our second test review where we heard James, of course, lambast Joss Buttler, he got the nod. Bairstow came back in, Crawley came back in, but nothing really seemed to work. And of course, then you had one of the most best debuts in recent times in Scott Boland doing what he did. So was it always on the cards? Was it inevitable? Because many people are pointing at selection going into this tour. Did it start from there?
I think for England, this runs far deeper than Joe Root. It runs far deeper than Chris Silverwood. You're looking at the structure of English cricket. You're looking at a country who, after the 2015 World Cup, put all their eggs into the white ball basket. They made a big thing of winning the 2019 World Cup. They've brought the 100 in. That mentality, that white ball mentality, that's obviously important. I mean, I'm not knocking white ball cricket. I want white ball cricket to have its place in the calendar. It makes the money. It is entertaining. I enjoy it. But if you put all of your eggs into that and you basically promote white ball cricket and you push the first class game into the margins of the English summer and you play all of the matches, or the vast majority of the matches in April and May before the English summer's even officially started, and then you finish off the season in August and September, what do you expect? You reap what you sow, don't you? You're basically playing the games when it's damp in April and May, and then you moan about pitches. And then you moan about players not being able to bat for 6 hours and to put big scores on the board. It's obvious, if you start to treat the county championship as something to shoehorn into the corners rather than actually be a main part of the summer. What do you expect when you fly to Australia? It's never easy. They've got some terrific players. Pat Cummins is brilliant. I love him, and it's great to see him succeed in his captaincy role. And he's the best bowler for me in the world at the moment in terms of pace in Test cricket. It was always going to be difficult, but I mean, what do England expect if the ECB run the game as they are doing? How can you actually say that you've been? They've made plans for this series for 4 years. I've watched listened to documentaries on the BBC, listening to the 22 backroom staff talking about how they've been planning the nutrition, how they've been planning the fitness, how the coach has been working with the team. You can make all the plans you like, but if the foundations of the game in England don't promote Test cricket and Test cricketers, what do you expect to get?
Yeah, it is, of course, worth wondering about what's going to happen next for England because, look, sometimes you need to hit rock bottom to make those necessary changes. From an English fan point of view, I think they're hoping this is rock bottom because, look, they chopped and changed, like I said, in terms of Crawley and Burns went out. Ben Foakes, like you mentioned, is the best wicketkeeper. He's not even there and thereabouts. And then, of course, the whole Broad Anderson conundrum in terms of them doing their own things. Now, it was interesting because before the test match, we, of course, saw a couple of digs perhaps thrown at each other, one from Root to the bowler saying that they didn't bowl Fuller as we liked. Anderson going on to say that we didn't bat as well. Is there, I mean, is that opened up a can of worms in the grander scheme of things for English Test cricket? Is problems creeping in that dressing room?
I think when you're on a tour where you're losing so badly, you're going to start looking at each other. Yeah, there's a blame culture in the world in general, isn't there? And you get that in dressing rooms, don't you, as well? When you lose, when you're winning, it's quite hard to get on with the people that you don't necessarily get on that well with. When you're losing, you suddenly start to say, "Well, don't look at me. What have you been doing?" And you kind of get those things. I don't think it's as bad as it was being made out to be, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that you have strong and frank and honest words in a dressing room, whether you're winning or losing. You should be talking about how you can be better all of the time. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think I know Joe Root from my time when I worked at Yorkshire. He's a great lad. Loves his cricket. He is a cricket badger. He just lives and breathes the game. And I'm really sorry to see him having to go through what he's gone through as captain, because I don't think he's the greatest captain that's ever breathed, but I don't think he's the worst by any means. But when you've got a team that bats as appallingly as the England team have been doing around him, how do you captain that side? When you're it's all right. Ricky Ponting sort of like speaking from the sidelines saying Joe Root should be stronger, Joe Root should be this, that, and the other. But yeah, with all due respect to Ricky Ponting, he captained probably one of the greatest teams that ever lived. When he was had the problem in the field, you threw the ball to Glenn McGrath and Shane Warne, two of the best bowlers that have ever lived. Captaining sides like that are used to winning, that also have batting to back it up, it's quite easy, isn't it? I mean, I reckon I could have captained that Australian side and probably won a few Test matches. I couldn't captain this current England side and win a few Test matches, because you need to have a few more tools at your disposal. I don't think England are too bad in the bowling department. I think if you're going to try and be positive, you look at the three Test series. Maybe made the wrong call with the toss in the first Test matches. The next two Test tosses have gone against them. If they've caught a few more catches, if they had a few more rubs of the green along the way. I don't think they've had the most luck in the world, but generally speaking, in sport, if you're playing good cricket and you're doing well and you're being positive, you probably get more luck than you deserve to get, because you're having those positive thoughts. Luck tends to go with the team that's winning, doesn't it? But there are bigger ifs. If England could have two or three more batsmen that could average anywhere near 40 or 50. If England had anybody that was waiting in the wings that was going to replace Jimmy Anderson, Ollie Robinson, I think, has been good in this series, but who is the next in line there? Chris Woakes overseas just isn't working. The batting just isn't working. Teams that don't get 400, 450 in the first innings of a Test match, the captain doesn't end up driving the game. You don't have enough runs on the board to be able to set the attacking fields. You don't have enough runs on the board to be able to experiment with your bowlers. You're always fighting fires, aren't you? You're always trying to keep yourself in matches rather than actually dominating and controlling matches. Root's had nothing to work with as a captain. You can criticise him all you like, and you can say, well, maybe in that situation he hasn't set the right field, and maybe he didn't bowl the right bowler. But if you've not got the tools at your disposal, Joe Root's been captain on that side with his hands tied behind his back most of the time. I struggle to see an alternative myself, because you surely pick if you're going to replace Rooty, if Rooty wants to go, you're going to replace him with somebody that's nailed down to play in that team. There are very few players in that England side at the moment that are nailed down for the future, that are guaranteed selection in 12 months' time. I don't know who.
It's remarkable because they've just played catch-up cricket, like you mentioned, throughout the main phases of this series, and I think that's what set them behind. And 3-0, many saying 5-0, but they have to remember that in the larger scheme of things, there's ICC World Test Championship points to be played for, so they can't really just throw in the towel. Let's just look forward here to end in terms of that Sydney Test, and then of course what proceeds after. Will there be wholesale changes? Would you like that from an English perspective? Because like you mentioned, there's so many answers, so many questions which need to be answered. Can they kind of fix it short term, but looking long term, if you know what I mean.
England in the bad old days had a habit of going down to Australia, but winning the last Test match and trying to cling on to something at the end of a series. So they've still got that possibility to come out with something off the back of it and try and avoid the 5-0. Although the
Yeah,
five
like a
0 I think is
consolation.
5-0 is looking likely as we stand. You've only got 16 players out there, so you've only got so many changes you can make. You've got Dom Bess waiting in the wings. You've got Dan Lawrence waiting in the wings. Stuart Broad didn't play in the third Test match either. There's potential to rotate a little bit in terms of those. I do genuinely think that you need to. This team is going to be hurting at the moment. Joe Root is going to be hurting, and that dressing room is going to be a tough place to get a smile out of those guys at the moment because for a young Englishman, I mean, Indians watching this will maybe sneer a little bit, and but for young Englishmen and young Australians, the Ashes is the pinnacle. India has become more and more important. I love series against India, but the Ashes is the pinnacle. It's just what in our countries you grow up with ambitions to be England's captain in an Ashes series, or Australians captains in an Ashes series, and winning the Ashes and. So the series is huge, and those England players know when they got on that plane to go to Australia would have had hopes and dreams, just like anybody would do, going off to do something special. And they'll be gutted. They'll be absolutely on the floor at the moment. They're 3-0 down after 3 pastings. There's no other way of saying it. They've been soundly thrashed, and they will be hard to pick up. But you've got to give those guys, I think, the last 2 Test matches to say, show us what you can do. Just stake a claim for the future. Try and put some of it right. Try and put a smile on the faces of I know damn well though that people in England that were staying up during that first Test match with hope in their hearts and not staying up anymore. They're getting some sleep and watching the highlights now.
Absolutely. Like you mentioned, it could be a last chance saloon for some of them, and hopefully it could be a beginning of a new era for English cricket fans. 2022 could be the year where we see it all. Right, James, thanks so much for your time. We could have gone on and on about England's problems, but we would literally be taking the mickey out of them. We'll leave it there. We'll catch you perhaps prior to the Sydney Test. Until then, have a great new year. What are your plans, if I may ask you?
My plan is to try and be positive about English cricket, and I've got quite a lot of work coming up actually, football and obviously the cricket commentary and what have you, and trying to get the podcast going as well, and maybe get a few beers and stuff going along the way as well to celebrate the new year coming in. But happy New Year to you, Avanish. Happy New Year to all of your viewers too, and. Well, let's hope that 2022 brings some fantastic cricket, whether it's England winning or losing, whether it's India winning or losing. Let's hope we have some fun along the way.
Absolutely, for sure. You can check out James's podcast, like you mentioned, that the Cricket Badgers, they're doing some fantastic work. They're, of course, going to go into the post-mortem of this third test, which was capitulations. James used the word shambles. I agree with him completely. And, well, we'll leave it there. We appreciate your time. Check out more of our content, of course, coming across on the screens at cricket.com. Until then, it's a goodbye from us.